Welcome to Channel's Business Global with me, Juliana Olayinka, from our studios here in London. Coming up on today's show, Rishi Sunak has fuelled his diplomatic row with Greece by accusing the country's Prime Minister of grandstanding over the Elgin marbles. Following a cancelled meeting, the Greeks have accused Britain of disrespect. Our business correspondent Simon Pusey will soon be joining me here in the studio with all of the fallout. And an estimated 70,000 politicians, including Nigeria's President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, have poured into Dubai for COP28, which will involve 2 weeks of climate change talks. There will, of course, be hundreds of sideline events taking place across the UAE, and we'll be spotlighting one of them. Prototypes of Humanity is a competition aimed at propelling African entrepreneurs whose products could change the way we live forever. Finalists Joseph Nguthiro and Thuru Tafese will be joining me from Dubai to discuss their social impact innovations. Then later, Nigerian doctor Ikpeme Neto, the CEO and founder of Wella Health Technologies, has emerged winner of the Africa's Business Heroes Prize competition, winning $300,000. I was on the ground in Kigali and I'll be bringing you all of the backstage news and interviews. But first, on Wednesday, Rishi Sunak was blasted as weak for snubbing the Greek Prime Minister in a spat over the Elgin marbles. At short notice, the UK Prime Minister pulled out of number 10 talks with Kyriakos Mitsotakis after indications his Greek counterpart would bring up the row over the 2,500-year-old sculptures currently being displayed in the British Museum. An ally of the Greek leader claimed the Prime Minister's snub was less about the marbles and more about his decision to hold talks with the leader of the opposition.
Of course, we're always happy to discuss important topics of substance with our allies, like tackling illegal migration or indeed strengthening our security. But when it was clear that the purpose of a meeting was not to discuss substantive issues for the future, but rather to grandstand and relitigate issues of the past, it wasn't appropriate. But furthermore, when specific commitments and specific assurances on that topic were made to this country and then were broken, it may seem alien to him, but my view is when people make commitments, they should keep them.
And would you believe it, the tax burden is now going to be higher than ever. It is ironic that he's suddenly taken such a keen interest in Greek culture when he's clearly become the man with the reverse Midas touch. Everything he touches turns to, maybe the Home Secretary could help me out here. Rubbish. So will the Prime Minister do the country a favour? We'll have to check the tape again, Mr. Speaker, I think. So will the Prime Minister do the country a favour, warn us what he's planning next, so we can prepare ourselves for the disaster that will inevitably follow?
Well, for more on this, I was earlier joined in the studio by our business correspondent, Simon Pusey. Simon, so it appears as if Rishi Sunak is in hot water, certainly with the Greeks, who have described him on social media as disrespectful. I think Sir Keir Starmer in PMQs described him as weak for basically cancelling a lunch meeting, I think it was, with his Greek counterpart. There are so many rumours. Of course, it's supposed to be about the Elgin marbles, but apparently it's got something to do with him feeling like he shouldn't have met with Sir Keir Starmer. Tell us all about it.
Yeah, so this is a story that didn't really need to be around for Rishi Sunak. One newspaper saying, has Rishi lost his marbles? And it was basically, it came out of nothing. And it's something that he's sort of, there are two stories. One is that he was upset that he met Sir Keir Starmer ahead of meeting him, which...
a lot of world leaders did that at the beginning of the week, didn't they?
Yeah, a lot of world leaders that come over meet the leader of the opposition as standard anyway, so it's not anything that's too big. And Rishi Sunak is saying that it's actually because he did an interview with the BBC. This is the Greek Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis talking about the Elgin marbles and how having half of them here and half of them in Greece would be like tearing apart the Mona Lisa. And he said that this was something they'd agreed he wasn't going to do. He wasn't going to speak to the media. Right. Which I think when asked a direct question and to answer it directly is a bit harsh. It's not like he brought up the topic. It was something that he was asked. And so, yeah, he cancelled a meeting at last minute with the Greek Prime Minister. This is a sort of a partner and a country that we rely on quite heavily in terms of migration, lots of things at the moment, really. And then it just gave an open goal for Sir Keir Starmer at Prime Minister's Questions, where he had one of his best days. He was very funny, which is unlike Sir Keir, talking about him having a reverse Midas touch. Everything he touches turns not to gold. And so this is just something that really, a lot of people saying, makes the Prime Minister look quite sort of spiteful, quite childish, sort of throwing his toys out the pram. And yeah, exactly. And he looked pretty defeated in Prime Minister's Questions, Rishi Sunak, with everyone sort of laughing over various things. So yeah, this is just something that didn't really need to happen. And maybe maybe there's more to it than we know, and maybe he was a bit annoyed that he met Sir Keir Starmer. Sir Keir Starmer over the last few weeks and months has looked quite statesmanlike, meeting lots of world leaders, going to America, talking about economic policies, things that they're going to bring in, and it kind of does look like a prime minister in waiting. So maybe this is really sort of caught up with Rishi Sunak, but it's not a good look either way. And anything that sort of is an easy win for Labour is surely something that he shouldn't be doing. I think the points will remain about these Elgin marbles or the Parthenon sculptures that have been in the British Museum for hundreds of years, but the Greeks are repeatedly and increasingly calling to have them back. I don't think that's an issue that's going to go away.
It's not. We've got a similar situation with Nigeria and the Benin bronzes. Many of them, of course, are in the British Museum. We also want them back. So it's not really an easy conversation for Rishi Sunak. Is he under pressure? I spoke about the Global Summit. It took place on Monday. It was supposed to be another great performance for him. But again, a lot of the visitors that were there schlepped into the city from Hampton Court Palace to meet with Sir Keir Starmer. They're obviously being briefed on the fact that he is likely to take over. Yeah,
and I don't think we should overplay that too much, because I think that does happen just generally as a matter of course. If they have time, they will meet opposition politicians. But it does just look like, Rishi Sunak week in, week out is sort of trying things, and he's sort of quite desperate to get anything that he can to sort of get a few sort of percentage points back closer to Labour. So it's not looking good for him. But this is kind of, I think, in terms of a general election, it's a bit like, bringing back David Cameron. It's not a bad move, but it's not necessarily going to. There are just certain things that seem to be happening that seem to be sort of Rishi Sunak, and maybe he thought this would be good with the public. Maybe standing up for things in the British Museum, he may think will be part of the culture wars, would be anti-woke, would be. Maybe he thought that this would sit differently with the newspapers, but it seems to have been a bit of an own goal for him.
Yeah, it's fallen flat. Thanks, Simon. An estimated 70,000 politicians, business leaders, scientists, activists, journalists and others from around the world have poured into Dubai for 2 weeks of climate change events and deliberation. The broad aim of COP28 is for Earth to reduce our reliance on fossil fuels, with hopes from the Global South that an agreement will be finalised on the Loss and Damage Fund. There are, of course, hundreds of sideline events taking place across the UAE, and now we are spotlighting one of them. Prototypes of Humanity is a competition aimed at propelling African entrepreneurs whose products could change the way we live forever. One of the finalists, Joseph Nigathero, whose company HirePack convert water hyacinth into biodegradable plastic alternatives, joins me now from Dubai. Joseph Ngathiro, it's an absolute pleasure having you on Channels Business Global. I know you've had an absolutely extraordinary couple of days. Of course, this is going to go into a couple of weeks because so many people are in town. For our viewers that are not familiar with water hyacinth, what is it? Why is it so harmful? And why did you decide to turn this whole system around?
So thank you so much for having me. My name is Joseph Ngathiro from Kenya. Water hyacinth is recognized by UNEP as the world's most problematic aquatic weed. So basically, it grows on freshwater bodies in more than 70 countries around the world, which unfortunately, more or less, much of them are in the global south. And this weed causes a lot of problems when it comes to navigation, irrigation, fishing. Countries like Uganda had to close down their hydroelectric power station at some point because of this weed blocking the turbines at River Nile. Around the world, even in countries like the US, loses as much as $120 billion annually because of this weed. Us in Kenya, we've lost about 10.3, 10.4 million USD annually because of this hyacinth thing. So it is the most invasive aquatic species that we have, and the research is out there trying to look at what we can do. Is it a resource or is it a curse? So basically, it is like a cancer in the water. When you remove it, it grows back again, and if you don't remove it, then it doubles through a process called colonial propagation in biology. So that's what a hyacinth.
It's quite frightening, isn't it? Now, when I was doing my research into Higher Pact project, which of course is your firm, I was so shocked to actually read about just how polluted some of our rivers are. Do you think that there isn't much focus in Africa about our polluted rivers? Like, we hear lots of conservationists talking about the coral reefs in Australia. There are activists in, beautiful parts of, really nice holidays where people like to go to. The Maldives is the country I was thinking of. And they're constantly talking about the pollution in the oceans. Why do we not do that in Africa? And what are you hoping to achieve with, your recognition at Prototypes for Humanity?
Thank you so much for your question. That's very, very true. We have a lot of attention going into the other sectors that are mostly the oceans, and the blue economy has mostly been the ocean taking up so much attention. But then it's time, I think, we go and recognize that there's a lot that's happening on the inland waters, because hyacinth in itself, for example, is an indicator that the waters are polluted.
Absolutely. And I know that the Obama Foundation, of course, have recognized you, and you're being recognized at Prototypes for Humanity, which, of course, is a massive platform and is about social impact, but it's a competition. So we've got our fingers crossed for you here in the studio. Joseph Ngathiro, who is part of the Higher Pact project, which was founded in Kenya. Thank you so much for your time, and what an amazing innovation. Fingers crossed that some of your solutions can be spread not just across the continent, but around the world. There are rivers here in London too. Thank you so much, Joseph.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure. You can learn more at higherpact.com. And you can always reach out to us. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks, Joseph. Another finalist at the event is Thiru Tafese, who has come up with an innovative way of creating bioplastics from potato waste. Thiru Tafese Mama, thank you so much for joining me on Channels Business Global. I can see you're busy at the centre there. Please explain to our viewers how and why you decided to explore what I would consider quite a niche, but of course incredibly important innovation.
Thank you, Julia, for giving me this chance. And why we choose this project is, the issue of environmental problem is everywhere. You will see industrial effluents are everywhere in my country as well in the globe. So we try to utilize the wastes that are basically generated from the potato processing industries, because Ethiopia is one of the top 10 potato producing countries. So there is huge potential of, waste is dumped into the environment. So we try to protect the environment, at the same time generate money from out of the wastes. So we are helping the environment to be safe, and we want to create a job for the people who are working on collecting the wastes. At the same time, it will have also an income for an additional income or revenue for the company as well.
Thiru, I'm in London. London, they do love fish and chips. I don't think I'm ever going to peel a potato in the same way. I'm going to be thinking about your business ideas. Thiru Tafese Mamo, bioplastics from potato waste. Thank you so much for your time today, and good luck at the event Prototypes for Humanity. Fingers crossed it's going to be a success for you and your business. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Julie.
In a moment, I'll be sharing highlights of this year's 5th anniversary of the Africa's Business Heroes Prize. But until then, here's a breakdown of the biggest business news stories of the week. According to Nationwide, Black Friday spending across UK retail was up 2% year-on-year and up 12% on 2021. Over the course of the day, the bank said their clients made nearly 10 million transactions, which is the equivalent of more than 114 sales per second. Almost £8.7 billion is expected to have been spent between Black Friday morning and Cyber Monday. Despite these huge numbers, shoppers are expected to snap up fewer items during the sales bonanza due to the cost of living crisis and strikes at some of Amazon warehouses. The British airline Virgin Atlantic has operated the first transatlantic flight powered by sustainable aviation fuel. The flight left London's Heathrow Airport at 11:30 a.m. local time on Tuesday, bound for New York's JFK. It's the first time that this renewable fuel will be used in both engines by a commercial airline, and the Boeing 787 plane was not carrying any paying passengers or cargo. The historic flight came just a couple of days before the UN's COP28 climate conference in Dubai, where the future of fossil fuels will be hotly debated.
Let history reflect the fact that this is the presidency that made a bold choice to proactively engage with oil and gas companies. We had many hard discussions. Let me tell you, that wasn't easy. But today, many of these companies are committing to zero methane emissions by 2030 for the first time. But we have big ambitions. And now, many national oil companies have adopted net zero 2050 targets for the first time. And I'm grateful that they have stepped up to join this game-changing journey. But I must say, it is not enough. And I know that they can do much more.
Either we can note the lack of progress, tweaking our current best practices, and encourage ourselves to do more at some other point in time. Or we decide at what point we'll have made everyone on the planet safe and resilient. We decide to fund this transition properly, including the response to loss and damage. And we decide to commit to a new energy system.
Tributes continue to pour in following the death of Charlie Munger, Vice Chairman of Berkshire Hathaway, who passed away on Tuesday morning, barely a month short of his 100th birthday. Munger had been Vice Chairman of the investment firm since 1978 and was the trusted confidant of 93-year-old Warren Buffett. It is a widely held belief that the death of Munger marks the end of an era in corporate America and investing. Now to my final topic. Nigerian doctor Ikpeme Neto, the CEO and founder of Weller Health Technologies, emerged winner of the Africa's Business Heroes Prize competition, winning $300,000. Now in its 5th year, the philanthropic initiative, sponsored by the Jack Ma Foundation and Alibaba Philanthropy, has grown an ecosystem that enables entrepreneurs to leverage mentorship, networks and funding to accelerate their impact across the continent.
So at the moment, we have 50 heroes that operate in 52 countries. They have created over 123,000 jobs. They have, as a group, raised $150 million in investment. They're 42% women. So I think the stats speak for themselves. But what has ABH done? We have been told by some of our heroes firsthand that the spotlight that we put on them through our show directly helped them raise investment. We saw during the summit today, one hero showed a graph. The year he received the ABH grant, $150,000, he quadrupled his revenue subsequently. We've seen how people have used our grant to survive COVID, especially those who came out of the 2019 competition. As soon as the competition ended, COVID essentially hit. we've seen how our heroes have leveraged the grant to open branches in other countries. One example from Rwanda is Kevin of Uzuri KNY, who used our grant to expand into Kenya, for example. Our first grand prize winner expanded across Nigeria. Temi Giwa-Tobuson of Lifebank took our grant and was able to push into other parts of Nigeria. So I think these are all tangible examples, and there are many more stories, but I think as a whole, they've really done phenomenally well. We had a mandate at the beginning of 2018 to run ABH for 10 years. We held our inaugural competition in 2019, and the mandate was simple: to identify 100 heroes over the course of 10 years who could inspire millions more. So we're the halfway mark of this mandate, and I think we have surprised ourselves. We've been humbled by the achievements so far, the support of the wider African entrepreneurial ecosystem, and the achievements of our heroes. And so we're really taking this time halfway through that mandate to reflect on what we've done so far, where we have to go, and really what our heroes have done in this time so far.
Look, timing and positioning is everything. Rwanda has done an amazing job at their own PR and branding, and that is exactly what I'm here to discuss at Africa Business Heroes 2023. As a social media influencer, as a social media entrepreneur, I focus on communication. How do you get your brand out there? How do you get people to understand the message you're trying to send? How do we collaborate? How do we connect? How do we network? So my talk later is going to be about that. I'm on a panel with other esteemed communicators, journalists, moderators, and all international. These days we don't talk about being Rwandese or about being Kenyan or about being Zimbabwean. We talk about being African. And in line with Vision 2030, the Africa that we want, we all have to move in unison. This idea of segregating now, look at how borders have been opened. Visa-free entry to countries. We are now African. So when it comes to branding, I position myself here today as an African woman here to talk about how to take the continent forward with the correct branding and PR that we didn't get right before. You said it correctly, and I'm glad you chose the United States of America. When we ask each other, what is the greatest nation in the world, most people say the United States. I heard this in one of the talks that Vusi Tembekwayo gave in my country. It is about how you position yourself and how you keep talking about yourselves. As Africans, unfortunately, we've still got so many problems. Are we allowed to go on X and vent and talk about the challenges our countries are facing? Absolutely. But we should have balance. I think as Africans, we need to take ownership of that. Our continent is not solely the corruption, the wars, the conflicts, the change of power. There's more to it than that. So we need to learn balance. There needs to be agencies that are literally working 24/7 to promote the best of who we are. And Rwanda has done that very well. Do you know what I mean? There's so much politics that goes on in all our countries, but you cannot highlight that day after day. You've got to be able to speak about the good, and if you need to take away politics from it, do so. Talk about sport, talk about tourism, talk about weather, talk about the beautiful women, okay? Afro beats and fashion. There's so much else that we have to offer.
It's such an innovative way to announce the winner. I kept turning around to see if mine would stop, and it just didn't. It kept beating, and it was surreal almost, but super elated and excited, particularly because it was a great bunch of entrepreneurs. Every single person in the final, wonderful people building great businesses. So I'm humbled and privileged to be in this position. Well, it's surreal still. Like I said, the ABH team are excellent. It's been such a great experience, from the whole process. In fact, very rigorous. We had, PwC visit us in Nigeria, go through our books. So very rigorous. Yeah, it was a very, very rigorous process. And so the ABH team, lots of kudos to them. And the caliber of people they've brought together, the networks that we have, can't say enough good things about them. So really excited to work with the ABH team to provide some inspiration to other entrepreneurs, to take that leap, because it can be difficult, especially in our country. I left the diaspora but returned, when I thought that the best way to improve healthcare and to improve the prospects for the average person in Nigeria is via entrepreneurship, especially in healthcare. So really excited to, preach that message alongside the ABH team. Rather than paying out of your pocket for healthcare, we provide you with a very affordable healthcare plan. It starts at just 450 naira a month, and you can get care for things like malaria, typhoid, get cash back when you get admitted into hospital. The idea being that it's really expensive to pay for healthcare, so we've provided this really affordable health plan that people can use to take care of their health. It's high quality, and we have it all across the country.
Well, sadly, that's all we have time for today. But as always, do get in touch with your comments and suggestions. I'll see you at the same time next week for more in-depth business analysis on Channels Business Global. Goodbye.